It's the Happy Families podcast. It's the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now.
Hello, this is Dr. Justin Coulson. Thank you so much for choosing to listen to the Happy Families podcast today. Taryn Brumfitt, you may be familiar with the name after last week's announcement of the Australian of the Year.
It's about the way that we feel about all of ourselves, our skin colour, our height, our age, our gender. When you take your final breath on this earth, what thoughts will be going through your mind? And no one has ever said to me the size of their bum.
Taryn Brumfitt, an Adelaide documentary maker and activist, has been not just nominated, but actually proclaimed the Australian of the Year because of her work around the way we view our bodies. What you may not know is that Taryn joined me just over a year ago to talk about this very topic in the Misconnection Summit. You can find the summit online and you can purchase it and listen to all of the amazing content, the incredible talks to help you if you're raising a teenage girl today with the everyday challenges that we're facing. But in the Misconnection Summit, I was talking with Taryn about all the stuff that she's now the Australian of the Year for. And we started off our conversation by talking about how difficult body image challenges are right now for young people and how they're different for boys and girls. This is what she had to say.
Gosh, well, it's not great when you look at the situation that is, but it's also actually no surprise either, because we live in a world that really doesn't support anyone to have a positive relationship with their body. But I don't want to paint a disastrous, picture here, because I want us to all, feel a little light and with some hope when we leave this call. It's not like we've got this big problem and we don't have any solutions to it. Like, we actually do. I think for us to change and for us to navigate this landscape, we need to understand what is going on out there and what's at play. We have these industries that are preying on our insecurities. They're trillion-dollar industries: beauty, cosmetic, diet. And what they're doing is they're setting us up to have problems, and for our girls as well. And, these problems that I refer to, they aren't actually problems in the first place. But these industries are offering products to problems that don't exist, and it's all about the dollar. And I think if we can understand what's at play, who's delivering the messages, the why behind the messages, it makes it a whole lot less powerful when they're coming at us if we can see it for what it is. So I think if we lived in a world that celebrated bodies and different shapes and sizes and abilities, we wouldn't have these issues. So I think the first thing that we really need to do is go, yes, it's a big problem. You only need to walk down a shopping mall, which I do on occasion with my own kids. And I remember when they were younger, I almost just wanted to cover their eyes and don't look at this. And but we needed to go shopping. But it's just, we do get bombarded by these images. I think the key is to understand where they're coming from and the why that sits behind them. And it's the dollar. It's money. They're making money from making us feel crap. I guess what I really want people to walk away after watching this knowing is that we weren't born into the world hating our bodies. We have learned this as a behaviour. It wasn't meant to be our life purpose to hate on our body and be at war with our body. It's just not the way it's meant to be. So if we can just take a moment, take a step back, think about, is the relationship that I'm having with my body, is it serving me? Do I feel good when I go out into the world? And if the answer is no, then what are you going to do differently? And I think taking stock of what's going on will help. Now, you gave me a double-barreled question, which I think is quite cruel, for the first question. And just before we started, everyone, Justin's like, are you shuffling papers? I'm like, oh, gosh, yes, I am, because I always have to take notes because I've got so much I want to say. So occasionally you're going to hear a little paper shuffle, everyone, but just go with me. The second point of that question was about boys and girls. There are different pressures. Boys have this pressure to be manly, to be tall, to be strong, and girls to be pretty. I remember at the Adelaide airport once, I remember walking through and there was a surfwear label and there was two advertisements both promoting the same piece of clothing. And for the guys, they were doing on the surfboard. And for the girls, they were like looking at the surfboard, but looking pretty. And I stopped in my tracks and I looked at this and I was like, and there is the problem. We teach our boys often to do and be adventurous, and we often tell our girls to look a certain way. So it's no surprise that we've sort of ended up where we've ended up.
That's really interesting. I hadn't thought of it like that before, and I've done a lot of thinking around this area, but it's actually it's a different message, isn't it? Guys are always active. Guys are using their bodies. Girls don't use their bodies except in an ornamental way. They have to look a particular way. I'm not trying to do this for product placement. Everyone knows that I've written the book, so I'm not trying to sort of give myself a plug here. But I'd love to share something. As I was listening to what you said, I really, when I wrote this book, I talked to more than 400 Australian girls about what it is to be a teenager. And given that it's been a long time since I was a teenager and I've never been a girl, this was really eye-opening for me, even though I'm raising 6 daughters of my own. And when the body image questions came up, I developed 3 rules. They're not 100% ironclad, but they're pretty close. And I'd love to hear what you think about them based on what you've just said. In my data and on what I heard in my conversations where body image was raised as an issue, these 3 themes consistently showed up. Number 1, a girl's body predicts which social group she can belong to. If you want to be popular, you have to be hot. Number 2, the combination of a girl's body and her social group impacts her identity. In other words, I'll feel good about myself and who I'm becoming if my body is hot and I'm in the cool group. And number 3, social media and media, the super peer more generally, which would include surf shops that have got these big billboards and what have you, they set the standard for what's hot and therefore who's popular and therefore what a girl should feel about herself. Does that resonate for you?
Absolutely, it does. I mean, here's the thing about if we unpack it, this was going to come later, I think, in the conversation, but I think it's good to go there now. This whole beauty ideal, and again, I'm doing the same. I'm not plugging. A lot of people would have seen Embrace, the documentary, and it's free on Netflix right now. We go through beauty through the ages. What it was like to be a woman in her 20s, in 1920s, sorry, not in her 20s, when the pressure was to be thin, straight up and down, small breasts. And then in the 1950s, it was about having a voluptuous body and larger breasts and a cinched waist. And then in the 80s, it was the supermodel, where it was very athletic bodies. And then there was the 90s, the waif look. If you stop to think about how preposterous it is that somebody, these industries are like, well, this is what we're going to determine this decade to be beautiful. And to everybody who doesn't fall into this construct, you're not going to be very happy with your body because, this is where it's at. And I liken that to sort of when people get on TV and they're like, well, this season you should wear. It's like, I'm just going to wear what I want this season. Like, I'm not a sheep. I'm not going to follow someone else's trend. And I think if we can encourage our girls and really challenge ourselves as human beings as to why we perhaps like something, and then challenge our girls to really pave their own way and make up their own rules. It's like Sia, and I'm sorry I digressed here, but I've been very much in creative mode, I think visually as well, everybody. But Sia would have been told to have taken the wig off by 1,000 different people. It will ruin your career. And she didn't. She did it her way. And I think there is such power in defining what beauty means to you. And when I was in New York filming a few years ago, I met some of the Victoria's Secrets models. And I have to say, when I chatted with them, and only a couple, I'm not sort of saying this broadly, but these were women that people would look at on Instagram and be like, oh my gosh, you are so beautiful. And I tell you what, I didn't have one beautiful word come out of their mouth, or there was no interaction with them that was nice in any way, shape or form. It was very cold and just not beautiful, if you know what I'm saying. So I think we really need to turn upside down this notion of what beauty actually means. And it has nothing to do with how someone looks. It's got to do with the energy exchange and how someone makes you feel.
I really love, we need to actually rediscover that concept of what beauty is. I might even get weepy when I think about this, but my wife smiling at me, that's beauty. Looking at her eyes, I just go, oh, this is magic to me. This is gorgeous. I've got footage of my kids up until about the age of 8 or 9. So as I mentioned, 6 daughters. I've got footage of them and photos of them running around the pool. They're playing, they're goofing off up until the age of 9 or 10. They don't even think about how they look. They've got the sticky outy tummies. They're wearing whatever's comfortable, or they're not wearing anything at all because, like, when they're kids, who cares, right? Their hair's crazy. They're living life. Young kids, they don't even think about what beauty is. And they're so unaffected by how they look, and they're just stoked about what their bodies can do. What have you seen about when kids start to lose this and start to think about beauty? And how do we stop them from losing it?
Yeah, I've done a lot of thinking on this, and I think, and this is anecdotally, this is from my experience in my circles and knowing exactly what you're talking about. And there's a great sense of loss, especially when you've seen it in your own kids, where you're like, something's changing. Now, my kids are now 15, 13, 11 and 9. So I'm kind of right in the spot of seeing changes, in changes, praying for changes not to happen from the younger ones, but it does. I wonder whether it's because as their parents, we are their kings and queens, and they are taking everything that we say and do in. They're like sponges and they're absorbing. I wonder whether they adopt some of our philosophies as adults, because having spent a lot of time with adults, I find that there's the missing part for a lot of people's lives is the joy, is the play, is the sparkle, is the having fun. And we seem to, as adults, go, oh, we can't do certain things because of some strange rules that says that you're too old to wear that or you're too old to do that. And I wonder, as kids get wiser and older, they're starting to tap into it. So when I think about this and that loss, I mean, Justin, you're the parenting expert here, but I would suggest they've got a lot going on in their brains that they're trying to navigate at that same time as well. And this might seem like a little bit of fluffy advice, but I really think it can walk alongside the guidance that you would give, but it's be the role model for fun. Fun is infectious. You know, get the kids out there having adventures and doing things with their bodies. I think when we're doing, have you ever heard of the big wedgie? It's a slide, like it's a massive water slide.
I haven't heard of it, but it sounds awful.
Yeah, it does. And when they say big wedgie, they really mean it. Right. A really big wedgie. But I took my kids there recently, and instead of the three of them like heading off and going down, I was like, I'm coming as well. And as I was sliding down, because I'm really heightened to how they're feeling, and, you know, as a parent you're like, is everyone okay? I'm probably that parent. Is everyone having fun? Is everything perfect? Okay, good. But I was looking at my child as he was sliding down, and I was like, oh, right there is the joy.
Yes.
There is the moment. And he was not, and nor was my daughter, thinking about their tummy or their thighs or the fact that one was short, he wanted to be tall. Nothing in that moment. So I think if we can be very aware as parents to make the time for adventure and what I call sparkle activities, which is the things that you do that give you a rush, I think it'll have an impact on our kids.
That is the Australian of the Year for 2023, Taryn Brumfitt. Taryn joined me for the Miss Connection Summit. You can hear the entire conversation by going to happyfamilies.com.au and downloading the Miss Connection Summit. Just Google it and it will pop up in your feed. Loads of great conversations with inspiring and pretty incredible people, just like our Australian of the Year, Taryn Brumfitt, joining us on the Happy Families podcast. Thank you so much for listening today. Can't wait to be with you again tomorrow as we talk about more things sort of food and body related. I'm going to be catching up with Deb Blakely from Kids Dig Food, talking about what to do about kids, fussiness over lunch boxes. The Happy Families podcast is produced by Justin Rulon from Bridge Media. Craig Bruce is our executive producer. For more information about making your family happier, check us out at happyfamilies.com.au.